Welcome to Constructive Interference, where visionaries sharpen visionaries. I'm your host, Rufus Cressend, diving into the minds of those who dare to dream big and innovate boldly. Today I'm joined by Winnie Hart, CEO of the Thought Leadership Academy, an organization dedicated to helping leaders refine their voice, clarify their message, and step forward with confidence as thought leaders in their space. Let's dive in. And so you are the founder of Twin Engine and also the founder of Thought Leadership Academy. Tell me a little bit more about these two companies.
I'm so excited to be here. We've had so many great conversations. I feel like I could talk to you forever.
We got to record it so you can listen to me anytime you like. There you go.
Rufus in my pocket. I love it. Actually, does that kind of replace 10,000 songs in your pocket? Or was it 1,000? What did Steve Jobs say? Was it 1,000 songs in your pocket?
I think I might get redundant after a while, so I don't know. I'll try to keep it fresh.
But actually, if that example is a good segue into really what it means to be a thought leader. And, I think of, it's funny, I haven't thought about Steve Jobs in a long time until just that moment and think about how he really changed the face of what thought leadership is because of the way he thought about how he told his story, how he launched his products, how he built curiosity into everything he talked about, even the style of his PowerPoints. I don't even know if they were PowerPoints, but what's interesting about Steve is that he knew who he was. He was clear about what he stood for. I mean, he wore the same clothes every day so that he would be consistent in how people saw him. And if you just think about Steve Jobs for a second and think about, what we have been building is Thought Leadership Academy is most amazing leaders in the world. They have a great product. They have a great story to tell, but they just don't know how. They don't know how. And now, Rufus, we have this opportunity in the world to really be at an even level playing field with someone like Steve Jobs, because we have these platforms where we can share our story and talk about our message. But what it really comes down to today is getting really clear about what that is. And it starts with really knowing who you are and having the ability to be able to see yourself outside of yourself. So that's on the Thought Leadership Academy side, and we'll talk more about that. Twin Engine, my company is called Twin Engine. We started in 1990, do the math. We started in 1990 as a full service advertising agency. And then Katrina happened. You may remember that. I think you're in New Orleans.
Yes, I am in New Orleans as well. Yes.
You're actually overlooking the Lake Pontchartrain, right?
Yes.
So we decided to really rethink after Katrina because at the time we had, just in our healthcare division, we had 9 hospitals and many of them flooded and people died. And it made us really sort of take a pause and think about, why do we do what we do? What matters? What is our purpose? And about that same time, I met Simon Sinek, who you may know wrote the book Start With Why. And
Yes.
It really changed the way I thought about purpose. And it kind of aligns with thought leadership too, because how do you really think about what your purpose is? I mean, because you're so busy doing, how do you really spend the time to really think about what the purpose is? So we changed our entire model from an advertising agency to a brand agency. And after Katrina, and through many years that followed and the success that followed, we really realized that where we started out with working for very large organizations, and organizations sold products and services to people and companies, we realized it's really shifted and it's kind of turned upside down, where now it's the leaders that we buy from and what they stand for and who they are and their integrity and their believability, the trust we have in them, their reputation. And so we've been building.
Right. It's kind of, when you talk about Simon Sinek, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that was the whole thing with the Golden Circle was people want to connect with people and believe what you believe,
Right.
And not just your product or your price of your product or what you do or how you do it. It's why you do it. And that's the whole start with why. And
Yeah.
Because people need that connection, that human connection. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, Rufus, that, we've all worked on that, Golden Circle probably, and all have heard about purpose, and it's a bit kind of overused, but the question now is how? So how do I take that and how do I apply it? How do I amplify it? And in Twin Engine, the reason why it's called Twin Engine is I'm an identical twin. And by the way, I've been one my entire life.
I believe you.
And
you began at a very early age, I assume. Yes.
Yeah, very early age. My formative years, Rufus, I became an identical twin. And,
Don't wind me up. Don't wind me up.
So you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this because, when you're a leader, I mean, we all own successful companies, and, we have these communities that we lead, that it's hard sometimes to actually see the label on the jar because we're inside the jar. And I've had the unique ability my entire life to see myself outside of myself. Like, I can see what I sound like, how people perceive me. And we've leveraged that experience at Twin Engine to really help people see themselves, help companies see themselves, and reflect it back to people and communicate in a way that makes sense to them. And that's what we're doing with Twin Engine and Thought Leadership Academy. And we've got this new world, right? Powered by AI. And we can really use AI to really be better versions of ourselves. And we can bridge that idea of purpose to what I stand for, to how I communicate it clearly to other people, to really accelerate ourselves and our companies.
To have the identical twin, to have even that unique perspective of what I look like, how am I perceived, but to have that mirror in real time, just to not just not be by yourself, or to have the aloneness of being like, well, I wonder what it's like to be me. I get to actually have a front row seat to seeing what it's like to be me. Now, obviously, you have certain unique things about you versus your sister, but at least you have a lot more of an advantage than other people would have. That's just an interesting perspective, and I love that. I love that story that you're coming from it with that experience, which basically says you have more experience than most of being able to have insight. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I was just looking at my phone and I just actually texted you, Rufus, and I said, maybe something to think about. And actually, you talked about the mirror exercise. We're definitely going to do the mirror exercise at the academy. And what I love about it is, especially with the Visionary Forum, you have a trusted group of peers that can help you reflect back who you are. And this is not this is a kumbaya thing. This is work, and this is about really positioning ourselves strategically for where the world is heading. And I just sent you a text. If there was one word that Winnie would use to describe you, what would it be? Any idea what it would be?
I'm curious.
What did you?
I'm curious what it would be.
Do you see it on your phone? The word I wrote was curious. That's funny. That's funny that you said I'm curious.
Oh wow. Okay.
I'm going to say curious for the
Yeah.
win on that one. Or how do you feel about that?
Yeah. No.
Being described as curious.
I think I could be better at being curious. I think that's a skill that I guess when I'm all in, I'm super curious, and when I'm not fully engaged, it's hard to be curious, and I have to force myself to be curious sometimes. But I think that's my hyper focus with my adult ADD, is that when it's something that I can hone in on, then it's just I'm like all in, and I want to know everything there is about it, and that's everything. My whole universe becomes, how do you do this? How do you do this? And it's fun for me. So I guess curious is a great word for me. I never really thought about it much. I always thought of it as something I could be better at, but maybe I just need to focus on the things that engage me, things that excite me.
Well, curious people, Rufus, are people that listen well. And I think listening, we'll talk about listening. We'll talk about how people consume what they understand about you in terms of a leader, and how you can really leverage some of these things in your industry to grow your business. And if you think about curiosity and you think about how people understand that, so I would say that you are a very good listener, and that you take in a lot of information before you actually define or decide what steps to take. And I will say this summit, this academy are going to be it's going to be a lot of information. And one of the things I want people to know that are going to attend is that we're going to work together to be able to start to build that platform to help you be the thought leader you're meant to be in 2026. Because I believe 2026, Rufus, is the year of the thought leader. This is about stepping away from the noise, stepping away from just the confusion and the overload of information into your clarity, so that you're really super clear with yourself, so you can be clear with your team, clear with your customers, clear with your community, and maybe clear with your family about what's important to you, what you stand for, and how you're going to build your new future.
And that's what we had talked about in our initial meeting. I said, well, who is this summit for? What problem are we solving? So we talked about four topics that kind of caught my attention when I asked you, like, who's this for? The first one you touched on, just basically saying, I got a great idea, but I'm not necessarily sure how I'm going to communicate that or how to implement, because a lot of times the visionary is that high level strategic person. They're not the most tactical. They're not the person to bring it through the finish line. So when I say the gift of clarity, being able to articulate what it is that I want with such clarity that everyone else becomes inspired by it and says, I know exactly what this image in his mind is. And I don't do that very well sometimes. I think people, my enthusiasm can be very infectious, and people are like, oh, he certainly seems to be really excited about it. I guess we'll go his direction. He's never led us the wrong way in the past. But do they truly buy into what it is that I see? And it's so clear in my head, but to be able to communicate that. So that's the first problem that we identified, that this going to this summit, you're going to help us tackle that. How do you do that?
Well, when I think about you, Rufus, I think about, so you're I might have this, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I see you as a more of a planner than a financial advisor. I see you as someone who can help me work through my challenges, help me solve my problems, help me achieve my goals. And I think there's certain industries that sort of put people in a title bucket that we need to rethink, because we need to really think about not only what we do and how we communicate to other people, but what they're looking for and what best way to communicate to them that they will understand. So it's two things at once. I think that most of us think that we understand and we're clear, but we never really said or asked, is that clear to you? And I'll talk here and I'll share some ways you can learn just in dialogue how to know if someone is receiving what you're saying and understand what you mean. So I think communicating isn't just words. And I think many of us think it's just literally the words that come out of our mouth, but it's how we stand, how we present ourselves, the environment in which we do it. Timing has a lot to do with communication. And also really understanding what their needs are and asking really, really good questions sometimes is the key part to really talk about what you do. So we'll do some role playing there. There's going to be some I'll say it'll be pre-fun. I was going to call it pre-work, but some pre-work before the academy to help everyone get really clear about what to expect at the academy, because this one's going to be a little different because it's about doing. It's about getting in there, doing some work, so that when you leave the academy, you've got like a really good framework to continue to build from throughout 2026.
And that's actually, so you actually touched on the other three pains that we're trying to solve. So first of all, the differentiator, what gives us that competitive advantage? How do we separate ourselves? And I'm so glad you said that, being a planner and not a financial advisor, because I automatically, because I'm in the financial services industry, get lumped in with every other financial advisor that's hawking mutual funds or annuities or whatever the case is, that people just don't know the difference, nor do they understand. I like to say, if you ask, you ask someone what they do and they say, well, I'm a doctor. I said, oh, great. The natural follow-up question is, what type of doctor? Because we know that not all doctors are the same, and either we need that doctor or we don't. So I think other lawyers are the same way. I mean, other professions, obviously, they have those differentiators, but being held out as a planner is how I want to brand my company. That's how I want my consistent messaging to be throughout every person in my company. But most importantly, I want the client experience to reflect that. I want my clients to brand me the way I want to be branded. So I want to be super clear. You also mentioned stepping away. And that's the part. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'd like to have some kind of exit strategy myself one day to be able to pursue other passions. And I have plenty of them. So to be able to step away without having the clarity of what Rufus wants when he's not here to give us that clarity, that's a real problem. So if I go away too long and I come back and like, are we going enthusiastically running in the wrong direction? Okay, I hope not, but that's the part that I need to be able to articulate. And I don't think, I think I can improve on that. I think I do well, but to be able to say, hey, I am so clear, and then here's how to get there. And that's often the big problem is we often settle in life, not necessarily always professionally, but settle for the lesser goal because that's the one that we know how to get to. If we think bigger and we don't know how to get there, it's maybe too intimidating, too different, too unknown, and people don't really like that. So even though I'm thinking big and I don't necessarily know how to get there, I said every significant milestone professionally in my life, there's no way I could have ever written that into a business plan. It's just such a random series of events that happened. Because I never knew how to get there, it never stopped me from wanting what I wanted. And I understand that not everybody's wired that way. So you do need to give them that gift of clarity of what that vision is and make it so clear that they know exactly when they've gotten there and whether they're on track or not on track. And then the last part is All right. And this is a pet peeve for me is going to different seminars, paying to go to other seminars, especially, and getting the great information and leaving with, okay, that was really valuable information. Now what? What do I do with this? And you and I have talked about not only the pre-work that has to be done, but the after, I call it the aftercare, the implementation side and the accountability factor. Look, we all have, I call it accountability is like willpower, right? We all have a limited supply of it. So we can have that intrinsic accountability, but that can only take us so far. We do need to be able to say what we want and have people we trust that we can say it to and have them come back and say, Rufus, do you really still want this? Okay, we'll change your goals or change your activities. I'm okay with either. But you said you wanted this, and I'm going to be your truth teller. You're not on track. And I think we all can use that push every now and then. So talk a little bit about the pre-work and the aftercare, if you will.
Well, thank you for sharing that story about kind of where you are. And I think that, most leaders think that they have more to give and they have more potential. And, they want more sales. Maybe they want more awareness. Maybe they want to stand out in their industry. Maybe they want to be the expert go-to person. And the challenge that I find with the thought leaders that I work with is people typically know what they want. They don't know how to get there, and they don't know, the specific actions to do it. I love to read. I have so many books, and I love, just like what you said about a seminar, you read a book, you're like, oh, what a great idea, but how do I actually do that? So I just want to mention to you, and this is a book that we'll have for each person at the Academy, and that is Stand Out as a Thought Leader. Best-selling book.
I was going to get to that. I'm excited. I'm
It's
excited to
going to be
dive
great.
into that.
So it takes you through a practice, and we'll do the pre-work based on that book, Rufus, where we assess ourselves on what I call the 8 fundamentals of standing out. And first one's purpose. We're going to get that one. Reputation, about how you're perceived by others. The next one is identity. So does how you reflect on the outside, is it the same person you're on the inside? I think a lot of the thought leaders that we work with they're one person at the office, one person at home, one person in their community. And how do we really align those things a little bit better? um, Authenticity, the words that you use. It's about, do you have one particular statement that you're known for? And are you authentic with the words that you use? The next is audience. And it's kind of a misnomer, but everyone's not your audience. And so we really help people find out like who their ideal audience is, maybe prospects, maybe leads, maybe their team, maybe the customers, depending on where they are in the business. Could even be board of directors, could be the world. I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but who is our audience, really defining that. And then distinction, and that's what you talked about like what makes you distinct as a financial planner, or whatever we end up calling you. By the way, we need to work on that. Distinction. I just talked about distinction for a minute, and there's a few more, but distinction is really about like, what do you provide that overlaps with what people are looking for in a space, in a place where others don't, won't, or can't. And that's one of my favorite activities. We're going to spend some time in the academy doing that. But before the academy, we're going to talk about assessing everyone on where they are with those fundamentals so we know which ones to focus on. And then you'll have a book that really, it's divided into 8 sections. And there's 30 tools in the book. And you just go right to the section you need to strengthen and work on that. So I love that it's a book that you do. And it's not about theory, even though we're going to talk theory. It's about like really giving you some tools that you can activate and maybe even bring back to your company or your team to use.
Right. So you feel that if I commit to these 3 days at the Visionary Summit, that is, by the way, February 2nd through the 4th, 2026, and I believe it's at the Hotel St. Vincent in New Orleans. After those 3 days spending time with you and my peers, other visionaries, I should be able to adequately articulate my ideas and communicate them clearly to my team and to my target market, have a clear differentiator in branding, feel more confident about stepping away, knowing that people can see my vision because I've clearly given it to them. And I have a clear plan of implementation that has some accountability to it.
We're going to talk about the first quarter of 2026, and we're going to focus on 90-day increments. I think one thing that often happens, and it's probably happened to a bunch of you that are watching this podcast, and that is that you have this big plan, but then life happens and you have to change it. So I really love the idea of following sort of a night, what you're going to do for the first 90 days. And
Yes.
that's why we're going to hang out for a little while after the summit to be able to, in the academy, to be able to support you through that process. Because, you know, you can do this if you have the right tools. And there's no better time to do it. And which leads me to really to me, the biggest value of the academy, Rufus, is the thought leadership platform. And a lot of people come to me and say, Winnie, I don't want to be a thought leader. But by the way, you already are one because you have a thought that you want to lead and you want to share with other people. And this is not about being the biggest person on stage, or it's not about being the loudest person in the room. It's about just being really clear about what you do and why it matters. And having a platform, a structure to be able to consider how you might apply that. And one of those things on the platform, which is I'm very excited about, is the idea of building a digital twin. And most people say to me, Winnie, what's a digital twin?
That's my next question. Yes, please tell me more about that.
So a digital twin, if you're in the AI space, is typically tied to systems and processes manufacturing. But now what we're doing, and we've been testing digital twins for about 2 years. The book that I just finished is called Twin Code. It's about building your digital twin before it builds you, and it's about how can you build an AI asset that can help accelerate your leadership. And I'm going to go through a couple of examples in the academy. Maybe we'll do a little test with someone on how that might look. But for example, you mentioned stepping away from your business, Rufus. So you can actually build a
Mhm.
digital twin that you could put all of your knowledge in that could just exist for your team that they could ask questions and have a dialogue with. You can actually, if you want to test one out ahead of time, you can just go have a conversation with me, winniehart.ai. Oh, by the way, everyone listening to this podcast, please go purchase yourname.ai.
I already did. I already did. Based on your recommendation. For all of you who are wanting to buy RufusCrescent.ai, too late. I own it. Because I know there was going to be a mad rush for that, so I got early. So
Well, because you can build this thought leader asset for yourself, a digital twin, put all of your knowledge in it, and you can have a dialogue with yourself. And maybe your team could ask you questions about the company or the business, and you could also, maybe this exists when you're gone. Maybe you have something that's left for your grandchildren. So it's a really interesting tool. I'm going to talk a lot about that. We'll also should talk about the video aspect of it too. And some of you might be, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is, and some of you might be like, I have no idea what she's talking about. But in what we're doing at Thought Leadership Academy is not just about positioning you as a thought leader. It's about how can you use some of these tools to accelerate you and to be the best version of you, because you are the most valuable asset you own. And with AI and what's happening, and our whole focus at Thought Leadership Academy is to stand out and stay human. And it's the leaders that are able to really tap into who they are, what makes them human, what makes them unique, and to be able to leverage some of these tools in the right way are the ones that are going to stand out in the next century. So really excited about it. Cannot wait to share. That's going to be really fun.
and that is such an interesting angle of me having the confidence to let go more, just to know there's a backup. It's not me. It will never replace me. The human to human contact is so important, but just to have some wisdom uh, as a backup that says, okay, I can go away.
Yeah.
They at least
Yeah.
have a version of me to give me a little bit more confidence that if they need me, I'm there on some level. But that is a good first step in letting go. And because, I mean, I've always believed this is your team is never going to know how good they are until you go away. You're never going to know how good they are until you go away. You have to, and to think about it from a standpoint of being the founder and the owner of the company, we want to limit their mistakes. Well, if they're not making the mistakes, then they're not learning either, and they're not learning to take risk, which encapsulates me and forces me and traps me in being here because I have to be the one that rescues them because they haven't understand the critical thinking on themselves. They haven't understood what it is to be resourceful, to have to figure things out if I'm always here to rescue in that sense. So this, I think, is an interesting thing that I need, very timely thing that I need.
I think one of the things too, Rufus, I hope that we walk away from the summit with is not only all this knowledge and inspiration to really think about you and being more you and using tools to be a better you, but also using these tools and resources for your customers and your clients and the
Right.
people you care about. I think that my philosophy, in standing out and staying human is really about we all have a part to play in this. and a responsibility to each other to share our knowledge and to support each other. In standing out as a thought leader, they're meant to be.
And that part resonates. And I think that's a good place to kind of start wrapping it up. Is that was probably one of the biggest values that I got from being involved with the Visionary Forum. And this came out through the human to human connection of being around other people that could see me, hear me, thought like me, um, was to let down the guard a little bit, be a little bit vulnerable, to recognize that it's not about becoming the leader or the visionary that you're supposed to be, because we've all created these images in our mind, usually based on people we admire, people who coached us, and say, one day I hope to be as great as that person. So we start to emulate and imitate. But then having the liberation to free myself from that comparison, to say it's more about becoming the great leader and the visionary that I am, and to find ways to tap into that inner genius, if you will, or just that unique ability. That's the part that I'm discovering. And I think this is, again, I have a lot of great art that is still left in me, a lot of great things to contribute, a lot of great ideas. Well, a lot of them are good ideas. No, some of them should be ideas that ever get implemented, because I think of a lot of crazy stuff. But the ones that are actually that I really have a lot of passion behind, turn them in from a thought to the physical manifestation of reality, is so rewarding. That's where I find joy. True joy in my life is to create things that I can say I did that, or I contributed to that, or that was the image that I once had in my mind. I could see the physical manifestation of that. So I want to recap on just a couple of things. I'm going to go to my notes, but who's this for? And I think that's important, because we want to have, when we only have about 10 spots left, we cap it around 30, I believe, because we want the groups to be working groups and intimate groups. And we want to have, obviously, we got to stay on schedule over a 2-day, 3-day period. So people who want to implement, not implementation, not just inspiration. I think that was a cool thing that you had told me. This is not rah rah. This is actually work. This is ready to shift from participant to an influential thought leader, committed to standing out in their industry. People who do want to differentiate themselves. I'll say this: every sale, every target client that you're looking for, in most cases, there's 3 people in the equation. There's the buyer, your target prospect, if you will, target market, the seller, you, whether you're in sales, not, you're selling, you want them to become your client. And then there's the incumbent, the existing service provider. To be able to drive that wedge, to create that wedge without, and still be ethical, you have to have a clear value proposition of what they're currently getting versus what they could be getting. And I think that's so important with the differentiator. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Seeking transformation, not just networking. Again, we do enjoy the camaraderie and the friendships that we forge at a lot of these conferences and organizations that we belong to. But it's more than that. It's actually having a transformational experience that says, I showed up one way and I ended this another way, and actually have a actionable plan that I can do. And then, again, the AI component, as you see that entering into your industry, being able to have that human-centric connection, human-to-human connection with your target markets. So I think I check all those boxes personally, and especially the one wanting to articulate my unique value and have that differentiator. But yeah, I mean, if you can check 2 to 3 of those boxes, I think you're going to get a lot out of this. So is there any other closing thoughts that you would like to have? Because I want to be respectful of your time, and I really appreciate you coming on my podcast and talking to my audience. That's been a pleasure for me.
I think it's been really fun too, but I've loved our conversations, because we come at it from different views and different angles, and we bring different perspectives. And that's one thing that's going to come out of this. I think this, what we call, Thought Leader Academy at the Visionary Summit, is going to maybe create the next thought leader for, the planet. I think we have the ability to really grow ourselves and to really think differently about who we are when we really know who we are, and begin to think of ourselves as the most valuable asset that we own. So I can't wait. I'm so excited, Rufus, to be in the room with everyone, and and to gain all the experiences from everyone, and just help everyone be the thought leader that they're certainly meant to be.
Well, if you like me, you're going to love them. So this will be great. So I know the usual suspects that come to these things, and they're great people.
Awesome.
So we'll put all the information in the comments, and probably we'll have some of it up on screen. But in the meantime, where can they find more information about you, Winnie?
WinnieHart.com, or you can talk to my AI twin, WinnieHart.ai. Have a conversation.
And if you want to learn more about the upcoming summit on February 2nd through the 4th in New Orleans, we'll put some information up on screen of who you can call, where you can go to learn more. And this will probably be like my 8th summit that I've gone to, and it's turned into be my drug of choice. This is where I get to get real and become a better version of me, and that turns into a better leader for my company. So thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next Constructive Interference. Thanks for tuning in to Constructive Interference. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow visionary. Keep dreaming big, and remember, the only limits are the ones you set for yourself. Until next time, stay sharp.